Kyle here from All Media Reviews. Here to do more of the vinyl collection. I just put up a couple more videos coming up. The letter S, so that would be number 29 and number 30. So this would be number 31 if my count is not off. So here to do the letter T. There's a few. There's not like a ton, and I can say after this is done, there's only one more row left. So kind of coming to the end of this, which is both happy and sad. But you know, anyway. So starting off the letter T, I have the one album that I have from Tangerine Dream, the German. I don't know if they had spent some time in England, but I know they're based originally out of Germany. This is Phaedra. They're one of, I don't know how many. They have 67. They put out a lot of albums, and I haven't begun to try to tap into that many of them. There's one record I want from them that I don't have that I've noticed the price has gone down a little bit. It's the soundtrack for Legend, which has John Anderson on the theme for it. But I mean, there's so many other records, but this is their most famous record from my experience. Most people cite Phaedra as the one record. It came out, where was it? Yeah, I thought it was mid-70s. 76, 77, 75, something like that. I don't know, let me look at it real quickly. I bought this in 2013, that's like the date on the sticker. Yeah, it was 73. I thought it was a little bit later than that, but I mean, they basically came around the same time as Kraftwerk, and they did the research once, talking on Twitter with some of the Rock Hall people about this at one point. They may have predated Kraftwerk, and Kraftwerk got more commercial success. Even though Tangerine Dream had success, you know, there's a lot of those Amon Duel, that whole scene, but Tangerine Dream has always been the one I like the most. Klaus Schulze, of course, has had solo work too, but yeah, Phaedra, I mean, I've listened to it, but it's been a long time. We played it as background music, I know, at one point on the air, but anyway. 1973's Phaedra from Tangerine Dream, to start out the T's. I'm doing this the way I should. So I've got, looks like at this point, 3 records, yeah, from this band. They're not in the right order, but, yeah, okay. I want to get more, but not that many more of them are on vinyl. A couple maybe. But this is the Tea Party, Canada's own. I believe they're from Toronto, but I could be wrong. They're somewhere in eastern Canada. Maybe Ontario, not necessarily Toronto. Windsor, maybe. I don't know. But this is the Tea Party, the trio from Toronto, you know, Rush Trio, you know, but talked about them, but I have yet to do a dedicated video on them, and I still want to do that. It's always about my whole thing. But I have 3 of their records. This the first one, The Edges of Twilight from 90. Came out in 2015. This was pressed, but I believe this is 95. 95 or 96. It was mid-90s. Yeah, something like that. 95 or 96. Anyway, this is my favorite record from the Tea Party. I mean, I like a lot of their records, but I find that this one is the perfect blend of their Zeppelinisms with some other elements. Sister Awake is probably my go-to on this album, but the whole record's great. You know, it's like even though they would go on to do other things, some really great things, I feel like they never captured everything so well in one record as they did on The Edge of the Twilight. A lot of people feel the same way about that, so do this right. Putting stuff away will be easier. So then I did buy this recently, and I like this record. I think I probably appreciate it a little more now than I initially did, although this is the follow-up to The Edges of Twilight Transmission from 97. I'm pretty sure it was 97. Yeah, which I know was recently pressed on vinyl maybe for the first time. But it's more electronic, although it's not as electronic as I think maybe the record after it, Triptych, was. But it's pretty intense. There's some... It's not metal, but I feel like they were listening to a lot of Nine Inch Nails when they wrote a lot of the music on this. The next couple records, actually. But yeah, the Tea Party from, you know, this is 97's Transmission. It's very different. I mean, totally, they were totally, you know, changing and trying to progress, you know. Even though people don't call them a prog band, they're a blues rock band or a grunge. You know, they have elements of grunge in their sound, but, you know, it's always like the whole Jim Morrison singing with Zeppelin. Zeppelin, especially a huge influence. Being a Zeppelin fan, you know, I've always said, like, with Wolfmother, but maybe more so now recently with Greta Van Fleet, or even Greta Van Fleet, or Crown Lands. Listen to the Tea Party. I mean, Crown Lands sounds more like Rush to me, but listen to the Tea Party if you want to hear something that's influenced by Zeppelin, but not completely trying to make that same style exactly. Anyway, this is the last record that okay, this is The Ocean at the End from 2014. It's not their last record. They put out a record a couple of years ago called Black something that I thought was not, it wasn't that great, but this was terrific, though. They had like an 8 or 9 year break, and it came back, and they had, I don't remember who the producer was. It was someone, it was mixed by David Bottrill. It wasn't produced by him, but it was co-produced by the drummer Jeff Burrows, which does an interview with him, the guy who interviewed Daniel Victor. He's Canadian. I forget the guy's channel. I like his channel, but I want to watch more of that interview sometime soon. But this album has many terrific songs. It's very epic. Water's on Fire. Interesting, there's only one song, the title track, that's on the side 4. I don't know how long the song is, maybe 7 or 8 minutes, I forget. Water's on Fire is just dreamy and epic. Brazil, the Black Sea. I feel like they found, they waited so long to kind of get back together and make a record, and they did it so well. Everything came together on this record. It's not my favorite record, but it's close. See, I got the CD. I think I might have a separate copy of the CD, too. This was in 2014, so... Anyway, am I doing this the way I want to do this? I don't know, maybe not. Anyway. So, moving on in the T's, what do we got right here? We have the one record I have from, well, not anymore, I'm not spoiling it too much, but the one record I had up until recently from this band, I want to get their first record. This is Norway's Team Me, who, this record's great. They're on a winning streak to me, even though they had like an 8-year hiatus. This was 2014. After this, they went on a break. They finally put out a new record last year in 2022, and then we had a new record just come out a few weeks ago called Return to the Riverside. But this is their second record. Yeah, they still sound like Mew, but again, it doesn't sound exactly like Mew. They sound like Polyphonic Spree at times. I think it's F is for Faker is probably, that's one of the best tracks on here. There's a couple others that, they're just bangers. This band, when they get these moments where they build things up, they get vocal tracks, double, triple layered vocals. It's really big, and it just works. There's a bunch of other tracks on here. I mean, in 2014, this was an addictive record for me. But they had their debut album, I Still Need, To the Treetops, and then I need to get the one from last year on vinyl too. But that's why I got the new record on vinyl. I pre-ordered it because it's like, I'm supporting them, and it's like, I don't know why I didn't buy the record. I know it was kind of pricey, but the one I pre-ordered that came in, I'm going to show soon, wasn't that excessive. We're getting some weather. Getting some thunder, it sounds like. Anyway. So, that was Team Me's Blind as Night from 2014. I didn't even say the title, did I? Blind as Night, the second record from Team Me before they... Propeller Records. I think I bought that, not that long after it came out. I can't remember. I thought it was when it was in storage I got it, so it was a couple of years after. Because I had that was 2014, I had put my stuff in storage around 2017. So this is 3, not the Joey Eppard 3, but this is the Robert Barry, Keith Emerson band in the late 80s called 3. It's a promo, actually. To the Power of 3, yeah. I've only heard songs on this. I've never really even heard the whole thing, but... I mean, you'd occasionally see this, and I know whenever I mention the Joey Eppard 3, which I don't have any vinyl for, I'd love if they would press some of it at some point. But, that would be among the top 10 or 50 records I want on vinyl that have never come out. Like, Wake Pig especially, or the last 3 records. But, yeah, I mean, this is prog. It's sort of 80s prog. I know... Also produced by Carl Palmer. It's interesting. Although I don't think he plays drums. He plays drums on this, maybe? They put out like a follow-up a couple of years ago, 3.14 or something like that. But, yeah, I can't claim... I've heard Robert Barry on some of the Magna Carta prog tribute albums, but I don't know his work. Like, I can't tell you that's Robert Barry, that's what he sounds like. But he must have done the vocals on this, yeah, because if you had Keith doing the keyboards. Of course, at one point, Kevin Gilbert... worked with Keith Emerson. This came out in 88, so it's interesting. He was talking to Keith Emerson early 90s, It was around the time of Toy Matinee. It's interesting how, yeah, because they wouldn't let Kevin sing on Keith's album. More on what I'm getting at is if they had ever done another 3 album, I wonder if Kevin would have been involved. Maybe he wouldn't have sang, but he could have, I don't know, he could have produced it or engineered it or something. I don't know, but didn't happen, you know. So anyway, that album from '88, 3, a lot of the prog heads love that record. Kind of associated with like Saga and It Bites, that '80s prog, kind of synthy prog, but not like neo prog like Marillion or IQ or I don't know. I have weird association with that period of time's music and the word prog. A little bit of NRG is a little bit like that too, but anyway, so here's the Toehider record. Of course, I showed when I was 6 months ago, whenever I got this, 5 months ago. I got this like in the springtime. I was talking to Mike Mills, you know, the guy from Toehider, on Discord about it and the status of this record. But yeah, this is a fantastic record, one of my favorite records of the last few years. This decade, it would be among probably the top 5 records of this decade at this point. I have little to no memories of this. Memories. 147-minute track. It spans the gamut from, you know, sounding like Queen and Jethro Tull to, you know, I mean, there's some moments that are kind of Devin Townsend-like, and, you know, of course he sang with Arian, but I've become a pretty big Toehider fan, although still in progress of just sort of taking in some of his new EPs. He's got a lot of EPs he's put out through his Patreon I haven't signed up for, but yeah, he's a really, you know, interesting cerebral musician who, you know, can do everything. He's a great singer, but he also can play every instrument and compose. It's almost unfair. You know, he's like Kevin. He reminds me of Kevin Gilbert, a little bit like Casey Crescenzo from the Deer Hunter too, Mike Mills. So, yeah, but this is still the finest thing I've heard from him, but, you know, these EPs or what he's going to do next, I can only imagine. The sky's the limit. I don't know if he'll ever collaborate. We'll ever get him in a band, because it's almost like he has so many ideas of his own. He's done the Arian stuff, but he'll never, like, form a band where he's doing a lot of the songwriting with someone. I don't know. It's a good question. But he's been doing this for over a decade, so... The only guy that I would almost compare him recently to would be, you know, Brian Scary, or I forget what his real name is, because he's not as prolific as Mike Mills, but he's been pretty prolific, and he's another multi-instrumentalist composer who can do the prog stuff and span different genres. Although he's not as heavy as Toehider, Brian Scary, I just talked about in the last video, or 2 videos ago, actually, would be. So I got this album. This is Tomorrow, the Steve Howe. You can see Steve Howe right front and center there. I don't know if that was intentional. It came out on Record Store Day. It was like 7, 8 years ago. I forget what year it was, but 2015. Okay, so yeah, it was 8 years ago. This is the band that he was in before Yes, or one of the bands he was in. It came out in like 68, 69. But My White Bicycle. The guys, and they did a bunch of covers. They do Strawberry Fields, at least that one cover. They did more than one. But I haven't listened to it. I mean, I'll be honest, you know, I know it by reputation, you know, and it's Steve Howe. I mean, I don't know if he was doing more bluesy stuff, because, you know, this was 1968, so, you know, prog didn't exist. Psych was really new. I mean, it's probably a mixture of a lot of those bands at the time of Psych and blues rock, but, you know, you think about Steve Howe, he has a lot of other influences besides just rock and roll or rock guitar or blues guitar or even jazz. He has a lot of, like, bluegrass and folk influences, but anyway, that's Tomorrow. Is it self-titled? I think it might just be a self-titled album. Interesting name. I don't know if there's probably been bands since then. Yeah, it's just a self-titled. You know, unfortunately, a lot of the bands from that period of time, from like mid-60s all the way to the early 70s, before like the prog explosion, or what they called prog at that time, they kind of were doing a lot of the same stuff. It was all like psych pop, psych rock, psych folk, you know, blues rock with psych. The psychedelia was like kind of getting into everything. So anyway, I think speaking of retro kind of stuff, not necessarily somewhat, and they cover the Beatles. I have the first 2 Transatlantic albums. Now, for those who didn't watch the, you know, the Sunday Prog stream with the Prog Corner and those other guys, and maybe in the history of my channel at points, or read my blog, these are the 2 Transatlantic albums I love. I love them a lot. These guys couldn't do no wrong, but I came to the theory after this record, and they, you know, Neil went the Christian route and they had to take a break, that they had lightning in a bottle in that. That was kind of it. When they got back together, I wanted to hear what they did, but it just... I haven't, that when I listened to the stuff since these two records, it just hasn't done much for me. I felt like it's derivative and it's not, what's the word? Those moments that I love on these records, I could not find them. Maybe I didn't listen to them enough. The Whirlwind was really long. Kaleidoscope felt sort of just, kind of like, is this really going to sound so much like that song? And then the Absolute Universe was the same story. And it was, part of it was so long, and part of it, I suppose, is my taste. So I went to the very first Transatlantic concert in 2000. This album came out that year at Nearfest, and All of the Above is fantastic. You got All of the Above Part 1, All of the Above Part 2 on the A and B sides, or side 1 and side 2 of the first disc. And then you got My New World. We need some like My New World, Mystery Train, and Help Wasn't I, the Procol Harum cover. I mean, this is oh man, My New World's great. We All Need Some Light is moving. And All of the Above, I revisited that about 9 months ago again. It's so good. There's so many great moments on that. I have in my ears, my head for hours, days, and that's kind of why I feel like I didn't have that same experience that I had, with the new records. But again, I'm not supposed to be talking about the records that came after that. So that was 2000, and then 2001, and now the CD is coming out. They put out Bridge Across Forever, which I'm trying to put the CD back in for, and they somehow managed to top this album, SMPTE. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And kind of like Green Carnation. This was 2000. This is the same year as Green Carnation, I think. Light by Day, Darkness, but Stranger in Your Soul is that's right up there with Gates of Delirium and the greatest 20-some-odd minute pieces of music of the last 70 years. It's a song that will people should be playing for centuries. Really, it's so great. It's so up. I think of Harry Potter for some reason at the end of like the Harry Potter, that little like climbing thing. That dun that with the string section dun. They're walking into walls. But Duel with the Devil is fantastic. Also, I think of the Batman line from the Jack Nicholson Batman. You ever duel with the devil with Pale Moonlight? And then Sweet Charlotte Pike, which is super Abbey Road and Beatles-esque, which totally works too. And then, of course, on the live album, they did like a 30-minute piece where they went back and forth between that song and the Abbey Road side 2 or whatever, side 2 of Abbey Road, whatever. Then the title track is fine. It's a nice little ballad, a sort of a breather. But yeah, this is an absolute fantastic landmark record. So I mean, I guess having too high of expectations. I know this was a side project that Mike Portnoy originally had the idea for, and of course there's the whole story that Jim Matheos was going to be in this band. Originally, it was going to be called Second Nature potentially, and he couldn't do it because he was doing the Fates Warning stuff at the time. Then he worked with Mike Portnoy and OSI and everything, and and then the whole theory that Kevin Gilbert, if he had lived, would have potentially been in a band with some of these guys because he worked with Spock's Beard and everything. But it's all woulda, coulda, shoulda in a parallel universe. That being said, these records I don't see ever getting tired of them. They're fantastic. So Bridge Across Forever from 2001. Anyway, enough gushing about Transatlantic. So I have, these are two different records, oddly enough. I believe. This is the band from... They're not I don't know if they're Norwegian. I can't remember if they're from Norway or from Holland. I think they're Dutch, I'm pretty sure. This is 22. Of course, I don't think their debut album or a bunch of the EPs they released got released on vinyl. I could be wrong about that. But these were the two follow-ups. The Limb 1 and Limb 2. You Are Creating Limb 1 and You Are Creating Limb 2. The thing I'm not clear on here is, did I get two records here? I forget. Because this is Limb 1, and if being among the two records, which one I like more, it's Limb 1. The Sum of Parts, Inspect, the title track, Ectypes. It's energetic, sort of mathy prog. I've talked about them in last year, doing the progressive art rock list, the Empire list. And they started to really catch on. It was weird. It was about 10 years ago. Right when their debut album came out in 2010, which I forget the name of it now. It wasn't, no. I should remember. I've got it on CD. Anyway, I just want to look at something here, though, because this is the part 2, and this was released the next year. You know what I think this is? This might be that I got... Yes, this is the full You Are Creating. So, because I didn't have... I don't know if they were selling You Are Creating Limb 2 separately, and I don't know. Maybe I just wanted to support them, but it was just 2016 and 2017, or 2015, 2017. Were they called New Energy Music? I forget. The debut album still remains the best thing they did, but I like the You Are Creating records, although they've kind of been, I don't think forgotten about. But like I said, about 10 years ago, they were really starting to catch on among like people that like the Mars Volta and the Deer Hunter. They were starting to pop up, and I was like, this band, kind of like the Reign of Kindo, has potentially a much larger audience because they write these catchy lines that are so energetic, and the songs don't go on, but they are busy enough that they, the vocals were accessible. I don't know, but I think the problem was they didn't use social media that well, and then they had this gap. It was like 6 years. I think the first You're Creating Limb 1 ended up getting released, I want to say 2015 or 2016. It was like 5 or 6 years. And unfortunately, in internet day, this was 2017 actually when the vinyl came out. In internet time, that's an eternity, unfortunately, with, especially a younger audience that want it now. Give me, you're the I forgot about you. I don't remember. I don't know who the hell you are. Oh yeah, I don't listen to that stuff anymore, If this album had come out in 2011, 2012, 2013, I think they would have potentially had even bigger... Who knows? They might not have done anything different. They might have eventually... Because they have a new band called Marathon. They've been... The guys... 22 is in effect. I don't know if they're finished, but... But these 2 records, and especially the debut album, which... Is it New Energy Music? Why am I spacing on the title of it? But there's... Oh, the first album is just... Hookah. I didn't even talk about what was on Limb 2. Because it kind of was a continuation, but it wasn't quite... it had some of the same kind of songs. The style was very much the same. So I think they wrote all of You're Creating at one time. It was too much music, and they didn't have the means to write a double album at the time, so... Alright, so this is, I think, the end of the tease. Yes. I think this is it. That's it for the tease. I got one more artist, and this is Typhoon. So Typhoon, the sort of large, chamber, indie post-alternative rock band, art rock band from Portland. It's led by a guy named Kyle Morton. Oh, this record's fallen out. But, they have, like the Polyphonic Spree or the Family Crest to an extent, they're bigger. They although the last 2 times I saw them on tour, it was only like about 8 people. But the first 2 times I saw them, I think I saw them 3 or 4 times, they had the large chamber group. They had like 3 guitarists, 2 drummers, a bunch of horns. But anyway, this is their first full length, I believe, or no, it's their second. The first is like a digital only album that I don't even think it's even on Spotify. But this is released on Tender Loving Empire, Hunger and Thirst, which one of the last tracks on here is very progressive. I want to say it's The Sickness Unto Death, maybe, or The Mouth of the Cave. Anyway, they have a part 1 and part 2 in this, so while they're not really a prog band per se, I think that like a lot of the progressive art rock stuff, the progressive part is in their music, where they're doing multi-part suites and adding different kind of non-traditional pop and standard rock formulas. So then this is an album that I have 2 copies of. I believe I have another copy right here to give away. Yeah, called White Lighter from 2013. I do also have a 10-inch, which I showed, the New House, which I talked about. That was the first thing I ever heard. But this one I think is a promo, because it has like a little press sticker and stuff like that. And I have, I don't know. This is at the Electric Fetus. And I got someone to sign. I don't know if it was Kyle Morton or someone, but... So you can see the back. Look at the back and the bottom there. Look how many people, and that, that wasn't even the whole band, but that's like 3, 6, 9, 12. I mean, Kyle Morton's voice is very distinct. He's kind of a gruff sound, but not too gruff. So that's one thing that makes them distinctive, comparing them to some other bands, like a lot of post-rock bands and stuff like that. But, you know, this is the album I think that got their most exposure. And it's still, push comes to shove, my favorite, and most fans that really love them's favorite. I mean, not everyone, but Young Fathers, they were featured on National Public Radio, for better or for worse, for what that's worth. Young Fathers was a single, I know. One of the songs is Morton's Forks. It's only like a 35-minute record, but it flows really well. There are these dynamics, these really happy sections, really percussive sections. They're terrific. I mean, and I think that I've always felt like them and then the Family Crest to an extent took the baton from Anathello and Margot and the No So-and-So's at the time, and even Polyphonic Spree to some degree, with continuing on the chamber rock. I mean, yeah, the Deer Hunter has done that, but the Deer Hunter has more elements to their sound to be considered just purely in that. I mean, not that Typhoon hasn't, you know, because especially then on this record that followed it, it was 2017 or 2018, which I can't even, you know, read. It's darker. I think it was like Rorschach. That was one of the tracks that people talked about on this. Because I know that when this album came out, I was really excited for it. Yeah, this has this like special case. Offerings, that's the name of it. Yeah, this is a really, I call it non-traditional. It's like, it's 2 cases, and this was darker. I mean, just look at the artwork on it. But it still ended up being a pretty good record. But again, they didn't use as much. I don't say they abandoned the chamber elements to the sound, but to an extent they kind of did. It became more, well, I wouldn't even call it blues based, but yeah, I mean, I guess I probably had bigger expectations for this record than it really than they deserved, because it was coming off of White Lighter, which I loved, and you know, I loved the previous EP in Newhouse, and then the Hunger and Thirst I was enjoying as well. After seeing them live and everything like that, but yeah, I mean, it's a decent record. Being a Typhoon fan, I'm glad I have it. The record that followed it, that came out in, I think it was 2021, I really struggled with and didn't care much for it. Thankfully, they put out an EP in 2022 I really loved. So they brought back a lot of the horn section. I don't know. I mean, part of it is a band with that many members, even though one guy sort of, it's a little bit like Kyle Morton's sort of like the Tim DeLaughter. You got to be able to have time and be able to, what kind of music can you make, and you get all these people that are in the band able to actually play on the record and even help write, and you know, where the songs go and everything. So anyway, that's it for the tease. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. I'll go on to probably the U's. Maybe I still may have some time today to, you know, get going and try to, you know, finish this sucker off by the end of this week, and then I can start looking forward to doing some other things, like, you know, those things I mentioned in one of the last videos, the albums that changed my life, the vinyl tag, and then this new vinyl and collection update, and then the albums of the year. So, but thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.